that's staff meeting. That goes to that's what because that mic is
to the link from. Yeah, but that was off of Facebook link. Yeah, it might be easier. Still nothing. Circle it down. Oh, just as I said that. The problem is right link. I brought us on screen from
slider over.
want to tell. You want to tell Tiff we're good. It's up from the Facebook link.
Saying that they're start install the pump to do they call Idaho Power? And feet of power, like lines, kind of thing. The reason I asked is because place that fiber hut over St. Luke's, and they had to. I think they cut the power. Right. Is it big? Can't load it with like a. Hundred, but it's
Sorry, I had to use my phone and you were sacrificed. I figured you needed the phone. Okay. Sorry.
Ready?
I'm ready.
all right. We'll come back to out of executive session. All right, council. With that, we'll run to I guess a presentation ish. You want to take the lead on this, Tiff or Councilman Sanders, or do you want me to?
I'll let Councilman Sanders take it away. I think he has all the information. Unless he needs my help.
I wished I did. All right, members of the council, mayor. At the risk of ripping a Band-Aid off what's been a sore subject for the last couple of years, it's time we take that step. One of the things I've asked for years, this is weird seeing myself gesture like that.
I was like,
One of
I took you off. Don't worry.
I'm
Don't do
just
that
glad
to
my
him.
glasses weren't slipping. One of the things I have asked for a number of years were a couple of things. One we'll discuss at the next regular council meeting, and that's the advisory board. But the other has been for a plan around the golf course to reverse, not stem, not status quo, but actually reverse the physical course and the physical impact of that course. I wanted to plan. I've asked for it a number of times. We never really quite got there. But now with the pro leaving and an obvious gap we're looking at if we're not careful in terms of services we're able to provide anywhere close to the level we had previously, it was time. The mayor invited me in. I was very thankful to be part of the process to actually start looking at if the city is going to have 100% control of the golf course, what does it need to look like? We need to quantify it. we need to be able to set it up in a way so that when we decide whatever that direction is to move forward, we have a way of ensuring that the results, the transactions, the documents, the planning, all have a chance to be measured so that we can come to a conclusion within a year to 2 years of whether or not the city is going to be able to successfully manage the golf course and not have it be the challenge it has been over the last couple of years. That being said, when you go back and look all the way back to 22, there really hasn't been a year where we've had a whole lot of stability around things that have gone on there. So this is the opportunity we have now to open that window, set a standard, have a plan, execute that plan, and decide how best to go forward with the golf course. When you start out with any operation like this, I kind of agree with the folks in the room, and we had a very open and frank discussion about all this. We need to set the guidelines, not the guidelines as much as the limits. How early do we need to have the course open? How late does it need to stay before it closes? What does that represent in the terms of staff time? Can we quantify how many hours we want to be open? That drives how many bodies you need to have. It also drives how many folks you need to have on staff at any given time to ensure you can provide the services you're offering at your facility. This is basic business for a lot of folks. So we've done that. And if you take a look at the clubhouse, you have the schedule, the proposed schedule and personnel. You take the time and you take the number of people, this is what we came up with for a basis of discussion. It includes a City Golf Pro, and we're talking in this example, and I'm going to stress this over and over again, this is the start of a discussion, this is the example. A full-time City Pro, Class A PGA professional, and a full-time assistant. And then 3 seasonal employees. And if that sounds vaguely familiar, it is eerily close to some of the organizational manning we had with other contract providers in the past. The shift structure includes 2 shifts and a closing shift. I will tell you that it was my suggestion that the closing shift always have a minimum of 2 people on it, closeout, and for the safety of the staff. So in looking at this particular example, that is what the clubhouse operation, when it talks about operational salaries, that's what we're looking at, the facility hours. One of the ways we're going to get this is having to change some practices around how the golf course operates. For example, right now, the rental of a golf seat and a golf cart, usually it's cut off. You can't rent it after X amount of time. You have to have, we tell folks that to have it in by a given time. The hard and fast operational rule I would suggest would be that there is a set time we want all the carts in by, and then we back up the availability of rental of those to match that. So in other words, if you want to rent a cart for, if we're going to close it, I'm going to pick a number out of the world. We're going to close and we want everybody gone safely on their way home by 10 p.m. We want all the carts in by, in the summertime, 8:30. You want to play 9 holes? Perhaps the latest time you can rent a cart is going to be 7 p.m. About an hour and a half to play 9 holes is not unusual. If you want to play 18, back it up 3 hours. That's the best chance we have for getting those carts back in, getting everything shut down, staff out of there, and we have some control over our salaries so we don't run into situations where we're going into overtime simply because we still have carts out on the course we need to recover. I'm not saying the public can't play the course at that time. I'm not saying you might not have private carts on the course at that time. I'm saying for the staff time and the costs associated with it, you gain some control by having the time you can rent one of the carts set so that we can collect them before we get to the end of the day. You look on the back of that page. Some of the general duties and responsibilities we'd be looking for are listed here. I don't want to necessarily talk off the page. And the typical market ranges for those salaries are down below. And the area that's been recommended. In the green box, you have what some of the comparable Idaho courses are currently paying. It's kind of a, it's not an exact fit. We're comparing Fuji apples to Golden Delicious apples. We're still talking a golf pro, but in many of these municipal courses, they are contract and or they're employees that have certain incentives built into their employment. Where in our case, I think we're looking at a straight up employee. And that's for the potential to ensure that the revenues that are generated as a result of their work is reflected back into getting the course turned around. Course maintenance is on the last page of that first set of handouts. You'll notice the golf mechanic is working 410s. That's by agreement with Jake and that individual, and that seems to work for him. And we have had a discussion about the number of staff involved on any given day. It is reasonable to notice that on Fridays and Mondays, the number of staff, including the seasonals, is higher. When you consider that the weekend is where we get generally the most play and or tournament play, the course needs to be properly set up for that play. And then after the weekend, so whatever damage has been done by the number of rounds played, there's a chance for the staff to address any issues that came up as a result. And I lost Tiffany. I wanted to make sure she had a chance to comment if she wanted to on that. We take a look at operational. I don't want to go to that page yet. There is one thing I want to mention. I'd see if I can cast it up here. One of the things we look at, see if I can get me to do this. Share content. Aren't available during this event. Okay.
Well, you probably can. We just probably have to.
I already got through. I have to bring you on the screen. Are you ready to be on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, I want to cast a Excel spreadsheet up. I've got it right here.
It says you're sharing.
This I'm sharing.
There it goes.
Okay. I stopped. I won't share anymore. This one? There it is.
There we go.
There we go. Yes, he can be taught. Council, what I have here, and you may not have it in your packets, but it's some of the information I've been working on. This
Councilman
is the number of rounds.
Councilman Sanders, before we jump too far, can you email that to us so we can look at this?
Let me, yes, I'll get into that.
Don't need to get that tight.
Sure this is the right one. No. Oh, you sent me too many. There it is. Okay, let me forward this to you guys. Should be on its way to your Outlook.
Okay.
I asked for these numbers, city administration, for a couple of reasons. I wanted to take a look at the flow of play each year. I wanted to take a look at who was playing and by how much. What I want to direct your attention to is the grand total down on line 135 across the years. And what you'll notice is we had a period, even with COVID, we had continuing use of the course up until 23-24 year, where we took a step back. Right now for 24-25, we've taken another step back. To me, this is a clear indication that our clientele is telling us we need to be doing better. Need to be getting back toward having 20,000 rounds to 21,000 rounds a year played from all sources to get this to move forward. Because the recouping we get out of that is a volume-driven business. How we can get to a point where we can know what that revenue is going to be is going to be by getting its budget, getting its manpower, all on the same calendar. Right now, they're not. And the fee structure is not on the same calendar. So every time we try to go through and crunch numbers, we've got to go back and readjust almost month to month based upon when schedules were released, fee structures were done. So in this proposal, we would implement we would synchronize all the data points with the fiscal year, the city's fiscal year, on October. Then being able to go forward, even by on a month-to-month basis, we've got a baseline that is reliable, but it means we will need to make sure that our current fee structure and fees for the next fiscal year are in place, and we can do all the public hearings and everything associated with fees, if we need to, prior to them being implemented by 1 October. So when it gets down to it, what's it going to cost? Well, also bear in mind right now that as of April 20th, you'll have an empty pro shop. Of course, in Emmett, winds up having all their tournament money that comes into them being put on gift cards that goes to Wide World of Golf or Golf Galaxy. That is revenue we would not see unless we have a pro shop and it is got merchandise in it. Right now, we don't have a way to do that, and our first tournaments are scheduled to happen next month. I don't want to make this sound dire. I certainly don't want to rush any decision. But I think that when we take a look at this, a couple of things need to happen. In my mind, if we can hire a Class A pro, that pro needs to have several months to be able to acclimate to the city, acclimate to his clientele, get his accounts established that are actually going to wind up being city accounts, and get used to operating our Teams system, our computer system, our point of sale. And as a result, and because that is the effect, I would recommend that we keep the current manager as a living backup, a living bridge to get the new pro up and running and to give him some flexibility with time to where he has the time he needs to acclimate to the new environment and to the new job here in town. I think we need to start investing in trying to do merchandising out of the pro shop. We need to make an investment in that pro shop merchandising as soon as possible. And it's not going to be a small amount.
What's that look like expenditure wise?
I think to get, if you, let's take what TJ has currently in his pro shop right now. It's not the most it's been packed, but it's not empty. That's between $55,000 and $75,000 worth. And that's based on the discounts he had bringing in, I'm sure, and other avenues of it. That's the cost to get it in there.
And that's assuming that a pro coming on staff will have similar connections to get.
I'm not making that assumption, Scott. I'm assuming, my assumption is if we bring him on as an employee, he'll be making those contacts on behalf of the city, and the city will have those accounts. Every time the city has tried to work with a pro and also have merchandise going through the pro shop, it's led to less than favorable outcomes.
Agreed.
So in this world that we have kind of cooked up to discuss tonight, the city owns and runs the pro shop. That means the city's going to have to staff it, supply it, and the revenues that come off of it would come back to offset costs of the course.
So if we don't have the wholesale connections up front and we have to invest in that merchandise at what equates to basically retail cost, there is no revenue to be made unless we're above market rate.
We have got, yeah. So that being said, I'm thinking back, because I've been here since '85, back when it was still a 9-hole golf course. And at one point, the city was running the pro shop. And when they realized they had some issues with it, I'm not sure what all the dynamics were, and all the records for that have long since been destroyed under the Idaho Public Records Act. But the city wound up in the process, when they brought the new pro on, the pro wound up buying out the pro shop as part of their deal. I know that when TJ was brought on, TJ had to buy the range balls as part of his initial contract for the driving range. So this kind of thing has happened back and forth between. So part of me says, I wonder if we were to contact TJ and say, what is it you want to not have to move what you have? I already know, because he personally told me. The folks over at Fruitland have already said whatever he has to move over, they will pay for. They will buy him out. I'm looking at like, we don't have the time. We certainly don't have the connections yet. And we don't want to pay the shipping costs that are involved, because you've seen the price of gas go up in town. You can imagine what it did to what I tried to ship by UPS the other day. The fuel surcharge was almost as much as the cost of freight. And that would get us started if he would be open to that. I think that would be potential. I don't have Paul in here, but we're talking that kind of money. If we have to bid that out, I would want the bid to reflect the timeline we would need it in place. and the diversity of the merchandise necessary. And I don't think we'd find many folks that would be able to respond back to that in a responsible manner, which would make TJ the sole source for that level of service in that time frame. If he's even agreeable to even think about it.
Right. I mean, it's a big maybe at this juncture. The concern I have about the merchandise is that that's residential taxpayer dollar being spent to buy at market rate today, with little opportunity for the city to mark up to make actual revenue off of that thing. So you're looking at a full cycle through of that, and essentially having to amortize the value of that merchandise until it's all expended. And meanwhile, you're hopefully making the connections to build the relationships to get the wholesale pricing and do all the things. There's also some implied service that people in Mountain Home have come to know. TJ does golf club fitting, right? As a matter of his service. Do we intend on taking that on as well as having the pro shop? Or like, are we going to now be not only the retailer that is in direct competition with the private sector as a public entity, and creating an additional new service of club fitting and so on? I mean, those are challenges.
Initially, to get this started, there's a bit of a paring down that would have to occur. We're going to have a paring down, whether it's as little as we can make it or whether we're at zero and got to build from the ground up. I would suggest that the pro coming in, their focus coming in, most likely for their time to get adapted into the new job, and perhaps even the first year, is golf operations, tournaments, lessons. Then as we see improvement in the conditions, we see the public is starting to play, we see a trend in a direction we want to go, then we can look at whether or not the pro wants to have, whether we want to look at changing that job description to include that. Part of the challenge with this, just so the council members are aware, what we put into the job description, he cannot then run a side hustle on, because he's going to be a city employee. And that's why when I take a look at what we do to get started, people will expect lessons. I think that's a fair representation. That could be in the job description. But the custom club making, the custom club fitting may not be a service we need to offer immediately until we know we actually have the wherewithal to be able to provide a quality service in that area.
So one of the points of feedback prior to this existing, now abandoned contract with TJ, when he tendered his resignation initially, right, we had a lot of public outcry to how do we save TJ? How do we do whatever is necessary to keep the individual that we're used to having teach our kids, we're used to having, go on these trips with, we're used to having fit our clubs and give us individually tuned lessons, right? So like that was a big part of what happens if we lose this thing. So there was the initial motivation, like how do we bridge the gap and find a way to offer something? And in the hours, literally hours of discussion that TJ and I had, I was asking for the postmortem first. Like, of all the things that have occurred, help me understand what happened. Now, help me understand what we, the city, and me as a new council person in 2024 need to overcome and need to learn today, so we know what to pick for a pro going forward. And he was very candid about a lot of those things, and we had a great discussion about it. The two big points were preservation of the side hustle, and that was quite literally the same verbiage that we used in that discussion. Preserving the side hustle of merchandising and lessons, because those are the places that both of us through those course of conversation identified that pro said that at the time, and this was a short year and change ago, pros are expecting that they have side hustle on top of whatever their base salary is. And those side hustles are the limitless portion of how good of a salesman they are in merchandise and how good they are and desired they are as lessons. But those were preserved portions of their income that were distinctly separate from the city's operations. And we were talking about it specifically, not in the, hey, you're going to a private country club, like in municipal sense. Here's where the divide usually happens. There are courses, and this is paraphrasing TJ's conversation at the time and his verbiage, but he was expressing that the city's operations and greens fees, cart fees, if the carts are owned by the city and all of those things, remain the city's. And the revenue that is potential to a golf pro that they are accustomed to having are, hey, we run the pro shop, we get either the biggest portion of the split, and the split is in lieu of a lease of that space, or we get 100% of those profits. And the same goes with the lessons. And that's where I struggle to understand how we meet the need of a potential pro if we're trying to attract a Class A pro. At this time of year, when we have an impending golf season, I mean, clearly, like, you can play golf today and it'd be great, right? Do we have any idea of how do we attract under those terms if we're not going to have a revenue split of the lessons, and that pro is responsible for the pro shop but doesn't have any incentivization themselves to market that pro shop? Understanding what our former pro has expressed what pros expect, it seems like we have a hurdle of how do we get from what's on paper here to meet the need of what pros expect, especially those Class A pros. We're going to attract from clearly probably out of town at this juncture, right? Like whether that's from within Idaho or the Western U.S. or somebody relocating to our beautiful little town. Will the salary projection here suffice without those side kicker, side hustle kickers?
That's going to be one of the challenges, without a doubt. When I was taking a look at this, was like almost every comparable out there is based on the pro being under contract. When the pro goes under contract, then it's negotiation. It is what you're willing to accept and for how long. And not trying to put any dispersion on anything other than what we're going to do going forward. Realistically, in my mind, we're likely to attract two potential groups of pros. Those with the young families that are just getting started, they're looking for a place to come in, and those at the other end of the spectrum. The advantage in today's environment for us may be mercy and healthcare. When we make a point to bring that up, that a pro could come here, a young pro could come here and in 5 years be vested in Percy at a salary that's more than a livable wage and have the time to grow into the profession, then I think we've become pretty attractive. On the opposite end of the spectrum, if we're fairly comfortable in the lifestyle coming in, but we still have a love for the game, that pro's a love for the game and wants to pass that love on to generations other, and is looking for a place that's comfortable, easy to get along with, and has an extra retirement out there, we're likely to attract that spectrum of the pros. Are we likely to attract another TJ? Probably not. But if we want to get control over what the spending is and how best to try to work it forward, I'm still saying we've tried other contract avenues, and I'm not saying we can't look at having a percentage. In fact, Warm Springs, I believe it was, we looked at, has a percentage of lessons that was going to the pro, kind of like you would certifications for a police officer going to detective. But that, and when you do that as part of the job description and the hiring, then those revenues they generate have to be paid back into the city because we're due per se costs on those and other things. So even if we can give a quote side hustle, we're really only giving percentage and a boost for services that could be scheduled within the working day already.
I think in the past we've kind of struggled with opportunities in how to incentivize for certain things, like the Azuga thing not that long ago. Granted, we're in the same fruit basket of the city, but like the enterprise side of things is a little more difficult. In this sense, maybe this is a question for Paula, and I'm sorry for not thinking about this one sooner, but if we were to offer incentivization as part of a new hire process with an employee, is there anything barring us from incentivizing one employee of the city under a certain task but not other employees for other tasks? Or is it selective in that sense? Thank you.
I think, like if you take, the certs is a perfect example. If you get a specific cert, you get was it so much a month, right?
Well, either that or I just signed a bunch of bumps for certifications or moving
Sure.
to on-call for detective. There's
Yeah.
just much like contracts, there's a way to put it in words and put it into the job description, make it work if we really need to go that route.
I mean, and those are static values, and if I guess the choice then would be would these incentives be static values or would they be proportionate to the performance, right? Like because that's where pros are typically looking.
And the other thing to keep in mind as well that was in my mind is once they become an employee, it's not a side hustle. Every minute they spend doing something in that job description is chargeable time. Even if they're on salary, it's reportable time for mercy, for vacation, for whatever. It's all reportable time. So there's no real side hustle in a city employee position. There can be incentives for doing specified work, but that work would have to occur within the normal schedule of their events. They could not do that on the side.
So really quick, and this is just me being me when it comes to the fitting, the demo days, stuff like that. The new pro would obviously call like a Mizuno, a Titleist, a Ping rep out. You'd go and do your demo there, and that's, I think you'd work that deal. I know TJ would help you work that deal in-house, right? But I think that's where we would like, hey, pro, go grab your Pings, your Mizuno reps, all them, and you let all the citizens know, hey, today's the day is Mizuno Day, or today's Ping Day, or Titleist, or Callaway, and then you work that deal with that rep. Then the lessons or the side hustle, I think that one is where the Percy thing gets kind of is more troubling, right? I mean, so we'd have to work that out down the road or talk about that one probably. But right now, I think what we definitely need to do, and I'm not saying we're all agree on this, but I think we definitely need to get a pro in. Well, not me. Daniel needs to get a job spec to council approval for the pro position. Sent that out to the ethos and see what we get. Got limited time on, was it April 9th or 20th, I think. Tiff did a great job of the cost breakdowns on the operational club salaries, the maintenance, taking out the obviously the $500,000 grant. The you want to pull that up and just kind of give them a really quick synopsis of that, or
Trying to back out of that.
Decker's got his screen up. Do you have access to that?
Stop sharing.
and I'll let Tip worked really hard on this, and she did it. She did exactly what I was asking. It came to a business plan, and so with that, I'll let Tiff walk her the method to your madness, or our madness, I guess. Well, let's show them
The visualization of the staffing schedule is a great
Yeah.
thing to see.
And
quite
then
honestly.
after that one, show them the budgetary process where we would have done this process instead of the cash carryover being that much more, it would have been even with all the kind of well, not true because we're potentially might have to ask the council for merchandise. But
I have a question. Does the our current concessionaire is he running another pro shop in a different town, or
Bill?
Yes.
Yeah.
our current concessionaire is?
Yeah, he's,
Has he expressed any interest in expanding his lease from the restaurant to the pro shop to take that on as well? If he's doing it in another city, why would he not want to do it here?
That's a very good question, and I think talk to Tiff about that one, right?
Jared and I
Basketball.
common interest of basketball. So it's in a gymnasium and in passing, nothing of such. We'd have to see.
Okay, because how everything I've heard, I am not comfortable with the city going into further business of doing business in this arena. So if there was a option where someone like our current concessionaire would want to rent this space, so we don't have to take on that cost burden of buying that inventory, what doesn't sit well with me is if this is going to be a larger amount coming out of our, that was my first question, does this new structure stay within our budget? But if we're purchasing that inventory, I imagine that's going to have to come from somewhere. So I would like to see if he would be interested. I mean, if he's running pro shop in, what do you say, Featherville? Or a different city, wherever.
I think he's taken over operations at the Featherville.
Okay, yeah. Maybe he would be interested in expanding his business into that space. He takes on the inventory and the cost to operate that business, and then pays his rent portion like he does with the restaurant, or his utility portion, or similar to what he's doing now, as maybe a potential option.
initially, I'm sorry, were you about to say something?
No, go ahead, please.
What initially strikes me with that notion, currently have him under contract, we're talking about a different level of service and an entirely different category of merchandising. I think we'd have to go out and bid that out again.
Mhm, sure.
Now we're looking at 3-4 months before we would get an answer. And by then, we would have spiders overrunning the pro shop and probably tournaments canceling because they don't have any place to take their prize money for their folks to go to.
Would that take 3 or 4 months, that bidding out process? How quick could it get?
Well,
No, I don't know the process, so how long does that take?
We'd have to publicly notice it, so that's at least, typically it's 2 weeks or more. Now. We have a panel, so it could take, and it's got a body to go and negotiate.
So a couple months, maybe, if that would be like the earliest.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, that's pretty parallel to a hiring process in a lot of senses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Like the concessionaire, probably for that in August,
October.
Mhm.
the lead times for the concessionaire to get merchandise in and get it up and get it ready to be available.
And you mentioned one of the options might be TJ. TJ. Keeping the inventory here. Is that a maybe?
Now, Rarely have I been around a businessman that is looking at a move that wouldn't rather sell his inventory than move it. So I think that's a universal theme around business. Um, do I believe he would do that? In my personal opinion, yes, I think he would be willing to open to have that discussion. Um, Especially since he's looking at April 20th. But again, our position for negotiating is going to be more on uh, finding that point where he would be comfortable leaving that inventory here, knowing that the folks at Fruitland have said, anything you move over, we will cover you on. So he is trying to move his inventory as fast as he can right now, and that's changing daily. Not that it's actually clearing out there like a fire sale or anything, but yes, I think he would be agreeable to being approached about what he would be comfortable with leaving that inventory to this there in the city if it were to be purchased, or if some benefactor director wants to hop up there and do that. I'll tell you, the point of sale system, when I was looking through the data in that, looking at sales, couldn't give me the full story because there were some entries that weren't consistent that gave me high confidence in the data, some of those sales. But within what was there, it looked like on average, just literally thrown up against the computer and seeing what it would throw back at me. Based on what was reported in the system, his margin was between 23 and 28% on his sales. So if we're running $50,000 worth of inventory, we'd be looking at a net, replacing the inventory would be looking at about what, $25,000 to $30,000 just in that move alone, going back toward our bottom line.
That's it.
That's as you sell it all.
Which doesn't have a fixed duration either.
Right.
I mean, that's, some of those could become heirlooms and sit on the shelf. I mean, that's the
nature
the
of
unfortunate nature of retail, right? So we could invest in hope. We know that we're going to be paying at or close to, or maybe even exceeding market value for those at the retail dollar today, if we were to do that. And that's a big if that contractor wants to sell that stuff, right? Like, that's certainly not a given at this point. So we buy those goods, say we do have to, under any circumstance, we have to go out to the market, and we, as the city, create a budget line that allows us to expend money mid budget cycle, because I'm still not exactly familiar with where we would expend those funds from. Right? We would have the transfer from the general fund to support it, but where do you expend from? That's a hard part to figure out in the middle of a budget cycle. That being said, we know we're going to expend for those, but then as well we have to replenish with, and by hopefully at that point we're not buying at market rate and we're buying at a wholesale rate somewhere as those items need to be refreshed. Do we have any indication on what the turnover of those goods are now? How long they're collecting dust for, or are they selling before they get set down on a shelf?
There's nothing in the POS that tells me what the age of the item was when it was sold. It just tells me the item and the amount that was received for it. So if the Oakleys were 2 years old when they came out of the display case, or they were there the day before, the POS doesn't give me that information.
So I guess I'll kind of ask the question, because I hear a lot of ideas here. I think my concern comes from, where are we going to get the funding, to purchase merchandise? We're talking about hiring a pro. When I'm looking through, and thank you, Paula, for sending this information for the expenditures for the 6 months. You know, we've already transferred $311,000 from the general fund to the golf course. We have the pump project was $297,000. Looks like from the reports, we're already almost halfway through our budget for salaries, seasonal. It doesn't look, we're only at 10%, but I imagine that's going to be coming up because with the season. So with that amount of money that we've already transferred from the general fund and contingency, I hear the concern and the urgency, but I guess I'm trying to figure out is what budget line in the golf course is being used for this? Is there going to be another transfer from the general fund? I mean, you know, it's great. The idea is great about getting merchandise and everything, but there's always the risk of on the shelf. So I think Tiffany, you had a little bit on that budget. So those are my questions that I would like to dive into.
So with that, let's just do the budget really quick, and then she will pop it on screen.
Yes, just a little backlog. Mayor Council. We've spent several hours working through this. We need people to keep the lights on, and we need the rounds of golf, right? So I started at baseline. We have to pay the people to do the work, right? What you do with golf balls and golf clubs and fittings, that's on you guys, and I think that's the last thing or hurdle we're gonna. So I did not factor any of that in my numbers. So whatever you talked about thus far, throw it out. Here we go. Go up. Here we go.
Not Kansas anymore.
Okay. So think about the work. You all got this ahead of time. Yes.
Oh.
Okay. I don't know if I can do it. For the sake of it, this clubhouse operational salary. The help of the internet, some suggestions in our discussions, we start at fixed point. So if we pay a golf professional average our size, roughly about $30 an hour, we all do math. I've been double checked and triple checked. My math is right. Just so
Like Councilman Sanders and myself.
the full-time clubhouse assistant, again, these are full-time city employees with benefit packages. We're gonna offer the 3 seasonals. So May, October, which is our prime golf months, we don't have a great winter like we did this. Based into the math, it's 130. Have to pay your golf pro and your clubhouse outside of the prime golf season. So 5 months, so to make 12-month calendar, which is common sense, we get a total of $214,000. If this scenario is offered, okay?
And this is full-time,
Full-time.
40 hours.
Everyone works 40 hours. We're gonna pay them $16 an hour. Some people only get paid 14. Some people only 20 hours. Try to go is true, and I don't want to say true numbers, right? There's a little bit of wiggle room there. And exceed that number. So then if we bump it over here to maintenance, go out for 3 full-time employees in the maintenance currently. The fringe, 6 months. Go to seasonal. Right now we're going to operate with about 5. On your this little staffing thing, it had 6. 2 of them only work about 20 hours. They make the 5th, right?
Right.
That makes sense. So 6 months of seasonal is 102. So total maintenance salary of the 12 months, again, calendar year, is $378,000. Tracking me?
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna go over here to the far side. Back to this first column. Currently in the fiscal year budget that we have today, which you guys already approved to operate this calendar year. The salary lines, all of them added up, adds up to $624,000. That includes the fringe. So in this scenario that I just gave you, 12 months, 7686 and the 214, which is the clubhouse and the maintenance, total payroll expense $592,000. That gives you less from your budgeted to a positive $31,000. Everyone tracking me?
Yeah,
Tracking?
sorry.
So now Question is, March. Want to do the scenario tomorrow? Can you afford it? Right? All in all, that's for 6 months. So divide the number above by 2. You're at 375. Yeah. Little clip it on the nice arrows and the graphics going over the side. This is your current budget expenditure report of your existing payroll as of March 31st. Right? So you have $449,000. That plus the 375 leaves you $73,000 to a positive in this scenario today.
Of what's been currently budgeted,
Right.
how to work within those lines.
Okay? So everyone tracking it. So I'm gonna exit out and go to the
Yep.
next one. What's the transfer gonna be? Alright, go to the next sheet. Big word card. Okay, so what we did is we took what is currently the budget worksheet. So many of you have seen this before. These are all the actuals that were spent previously in the history, right? So basically I went through your salaries are your salaries that we just discussed, right? So shows you 24, 25. Operational, we have to have these items to function. Maybe you don't need uniform, but right now, it's like uniforms and equipment in the department. Okay, drug testing has to happen, gas and oil has to happen. So the total of that is $98,000 existing today. Clubhouse, 42.5. That was approved in this fiscal. Ground maintenance, $195,000.
Yep.
Your capital outlay, we reduced everything. Nothing's there other than the 22.5. In case something breaks, he has to replace it for some need. It's gonna be minimal, right? His lease purchase equipment, that's an obligation he has to maintain. Sorry. Those are the actual payments. You can see it. The blue box. The blue box shows you your lease equipments annually. You have to make that payment obligation. Your CIP of the 22.5. Expenditures of the lines above that we talked about in yellow, they add up to $336,000. Total expenditures, maintain the course is 451. Salaries, 564, you're at $1 million. Yep. Average carryover is $175,000. You back the average out. You're left with an expenditure after carryover is $850,000. Take the revenue, which is in the box, which brings up the transfers that Councilman McCarthy was talking about. The projected revenues for this operating budget cycle was 1.7 million. Out the transfer from the general fund of the 311, 297 that went to the pump project, and the grant of 500,000, each $650,000 revenue off that expenditure over cash carryover. That leaves you $191,000 is right now what you would look at scenario.
It's an additional transfer, correct?
No, this is if you started in FY27 with this scenario presented. I'm gonna have any more transfers this year because you would have that plus $73,000 differential in salary lines.
Yep.
Any questions?
That's if revenue's on track. Follow the projection, right? The 650,000.
Correct. I would say your revenue probably is.
Had for the last couple of years showing the dip.
Yeah, there's been a decline the last 2 years. And there's a lot of factors that can go into that.
Because we have revenue from the golf carts, also an expense too. Ask what the grant is. $500,000 grant. So it's a couple grants then. No success. Applied for them.
But that is projected, right?
Actually, she backed that out earlier.
On here? On mine, it shows that the grant is projected in there, but that's wrong.
Well, the grant is currently in this year's budget, right? But on the spreadsheet I gave you, backed out.
Yeah.
It's nice in here.
Mm-hmm.
You were telling me you were gonna fry in here.
Meetings in the park, weather permitting.
Councilman Workman, it's on the page 8 of the 13 of the document. Just shows the project.
Right, this,
Yeah.
this box right here,
Mm-hmm.
this, like, the total projected revenue was 7. I backed out these 3 items.
Oh, gotcha.
650.
Okay, thank you.
So if you don't add any of those into next year's budget, everything else stayed exactly
Okay.
the same, would get you to 190.
Thank you.
Tracking me on that?
Mhm.
That's with like salaries being, they were projected in at 40. And I did have
Still working a potential grant thing for the golf.
actual.
So big.
Actual revenue. Actual revenues, but however, you have to still, you have to do the math out of this and back out the transfer. So don't hit the bottom dollar.
So Tiffany, am I reading this right? I'm looking at the second line for green fees. Last year's actual was the 255, almost 256. Currently, we can get the season rolling. We're looking at projection.
We have to project these as we start the budget. So
which was beneficial to the city's business. First and foremost.
But when you
And so we saw less rounds played in this last year, but we've projected for a flat actual to actual from, sorry, to, so go ahead.
I guess I would disagree. Actual greens fees. To greens fees actual revenue. It's 200. 24, 25, it was 100 that by. If your average is 110, like averaging out, but we've shortfalled it on our end in budgeting projection.
Just trying to compare the numbers for the rounds that we have. Looks like you're saying the season pass has gone down a bit, but it's still saying average 23 to 22, 23. We only had 179,000 in actual green fees, which was that looks like the peak of green fees, 20,397. Then the following year we were down to 19,732. And the following year we were down 17,745. So I guess
He's looking at the total
Looking
rounds
at
played.
Councilman Sanders' spreadsheet for rounds played. So the trajectory is the rounds played's going down, but we're making more money.
But you've
Well,
raised your fees.
We raised the
Right.
fees.
We've raised the rates.
Those numbers are.
So with this as well, I'm going to throw out this is another, so if the council is so inclined to hire the pro, get that path moving forward, if this plan is acceptable here in the next council meeting, getting that out as soon as possible due to the season. And then the other caveat is letting the pro help us with the training facility. That'll be another discussion down the road that you guys are going to have where that goes into the future as well. But I think a pro is better cuts than this guy. I play on him, but I'm not a pro at it, or I don't know what sim's better than another sim. And but just food for thought down the road, if this council so inclines to go down the golf pro avenue. So
That implies that the city's gonna buy the sim?
yes. And all revenues would go to city.
and that means so the purchasing the merchandise for the pro shop too, or is that
Well,
separate?
that's something different. That's totally something different. That'll be for you guys to discuss later when I'm just saying if you guys said we want the pro, then we get a pro in, and then we bring the pro in and we have those discussions.
So yes, I want the pro. I'm happy with this part. I'm questioning the pro shop, but that's small potatoes right now, I guess. So yes, yes.
So
Go ahead. Okay.
just so everyone knows, if you decide to be the merchandise, if the city decides to be the merchandiser in the pro shop, your revenue is a projection to your expenditure projection. So you have to stay within those parameters. You can't buy balls and just sell balls and you're gonna get it back.
Yeah,
So
right.
your budgeting doesn't work like
Yeah.
private business works.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep
But
that in mind as you work through that.
does council? I want to know how council feels about going out for a bid for that. And it, yes, taking several months potentially. How do you guys feel?
For what?
For the pro shop.
For the pro shop.
Or the pro?
For the pro shop.
In the context of the conversation earlier
Mhm.
about the concessionaire.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tiff. This is open discussion for us.
I think if the council so chooses that we're gonna want to hire a pro, I think we need to involve that pro in some of that decision. Either maybe the pro, Councilman Sanders earlier, maybe that's the side hustle of the pro you hire as an employee.
So that,
Or,
oh, sorry.
no, you're fine. And then you're not obligated to the responsibility of merchandising.
But if he's a city employee, then he can't go that route of the, what you guys keep saying, side hustle. So, that's a caveat, right? But if we bid out for the pro, I think this is where Councilman Sanders' concern is, and correct me if I'm wrong. We bid out for pro, that's gonna be a process, right? What do we do in the meantime in that bidding process for those several months? The golf season's kicking off. That's your concern, right?
Well-
People are gonna play golf and they might want to cash out, what did you call it? Their
Pro shop credit.
credit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where you're trying to fill that gap
Yeah.
for that 3 months-ish, whatever it takes,
Well-
while we determine.
Yes. If we decide to go that route, my concern is with the tournaments we've contracted to bring on board. And that's part of the golf operations, is that tournament's a contract between the city and the tournament directors wanting to bring those folks out here. Their price structure is part of what they do with their tournaments. Traditionally, that has been brought back into the pro shop. Those prize funds from those tournaments go through the pro shop.
And only the pro shop.
And only the pro shop. So there is every tournament that gets set up, there's a known quantity of money that's going to be set aside for those prizes. It'll vary depending upon how the tournament directors set up their tournaments. Right now, we've got tournaments scheduled, about 11 of them that are on the books that I know of, that is going to run through this period between now and October 1st, that they're going to have no place to send those funds unless they're going to hand out gift cards to birdies. And I'd have a hard time eating $300 worth of burgers.
That's an afternoon.
Not my family.
Come on. Rookie numbers.
So,
Go
Yeah.
eat me more often.
3 kiddos.
and without that being there and available, we become less attractive to those tournament directors looking for a place to host those tournaments. And that's part of our challenge with this. That's why I want to get a baseline established and a starting line, for lack of a better term, that we go forward and measure how we get this done and get it going in the right direction, because we're a little disjointed in our operations and our planning right now.
And I
So-
appreciate you headhunting this spot on, because I mean, I know that's a big concern, right? Since it's a nice, it's what, 80 some degrees today, right? People are out there. Again, if we did take on, as we saw, what was the offset cost there, where if we did the 6 months
73 grand.
Yes.
or more, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm not gonna share.
No, just tell me.
73,982.
Okay, so you're saying that difference could potentially
Oh, no.
go,
Those are that's
Oh.
allocated in salary.
so it can't.
Well,
It's coming back to the
we
bottom.
would have to
to
come back
allow-
to you guys to
We
reallocate
would have
that
to
fund.
approve that.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying, so it's a,
Yes,
it's
a
an
potential.
it's an option,
yes.
potentially. Okay, so, like, that would be a one and done, like, I don't want us to be in the business of doing this, right? So if the,
Well, this puts us in the business of
Ah.
being merchandisers, though.
for,
If we commit to a pro without knowing the business plan behind the pro and the potential
Mhm.
of, we've started the conversation about, here's what our initial investment for merchandise is. Has there been any conversation that evolves out of that that shows and projects what a breakover point really looks like, because we have this 5-year target, but we also know that there is a significant amount of revenue that is generated from tournaments, right? And especially if you're looking at a merchandising markup from the wholesale to the retail portion of this, those tournament dollars are funneled specifically into the city's wholly owned merchandising outfit at that point, that there's a significant potential for 28-30%, I think was your estimate on what those markups could be, right? So we have year one investment, we spend $75,000, $50,000, whatever that initial investment is to get some merchandise in there. Those tournament dollars are bound as prize dollars to be spent in that location, and they're not transferable out to Golf Galaxy or something. Mm-hmm. They must be expended within Mountain Home. Like, I think we've all understood the revenue potential there. It's the question of when is the breakover? Are we looking at a 3-year mark before we start inching towards the break-even point? I worry again that merchandise sits on the shelf for 18 months, 24 months, and while we are replenishing to the minor value as we sell off those pieces of merchandise, and we're filling in with those items with a greater margin, where does that intersection of turnover actually start to exist? 2.5 years, 3 years? That's like deciding the pro today. I see the urgency in that thing, but if we're proposing an entire plan where we become, as the city, have the business plan, like those are the points of investment of like when does the taxpayer's dollar that gets expended to buy these things, when does that start to see revenue generation for itself, and when does it pay for itself? Because that's not on day one, for sure.
It was just like the range machine. We allocated, I think it was like $70K for the range machine. That was to get the new ball picker, the picker itself, the cage, the machine, the building, the electrical, all that put in, and we already had a return on investment in less than 2 years. That's a quantifiable data that we can articulate.
I don't know if that's wholly one-to-one with merchandise, because like I might go to Play It Again Sports and buy my clubs and be perfectly happy with those for a decade, right? Whereas anytime I go to the golf course and I want to hit a bucket of range balls, like that's the only place to buy the bucket of range balls, and that's what I'm going to do on every visit. So yes, the potential is there. I don't know that they're interchangeable in that sense, where merchandise is much more volatile in that way.
And I see where you're coming, because when I go to a course, I go, oh crud, I forgot my glove. I'm gonna go buy a glove. Oh, I forgot my balls. It'd be gloves, balls, tees. What am I missing?
Hats, sunscreen.
Yeah.
From
So-
that,
So we had a conversation with three. So City of Nampa and City of Caldwell have all taken on their own in the municipalities. So Jake and you will call all those courses tomorrow and find out what they inventory within their pro shop, what that budget revenue and expenditures are annually, and how they go through their audit with, and then we can bring that back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
Never
that-
got-
the audit side of this is
Well, it's no,
right.
it's no different than us. We do the same retail at the pool, so.
Okay.
Mayor,
Oh, go ahead.
sorry, just had
Yep, it's all
another
good.
question. So this avenue, we're talking about the pro making a city employee, I guess just for sake of knowledge, was there a consideration to kind of going to a contractor style in that? Because just thinking in my mind, we're talking about, okay, hiring a pro as a city employee, we're paying salary plus fringe, and we're talking about investing potentially $73,000, just throwing that out there since that's what's left over for merchandise, hoping that we have a return of investment on that to come back for the taxpayers, where to me, there's these kind of questions of the return of investment and what's the risk, where if it's a contractor and everything's put on the contractor, as I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilwoman Workley, you talked about an example of the concessionaire, if they had brought in their merchandise and the risk, where now we're not paying an employee as a city employee for salary and fringe, that we could be saving some money on that, and then also we wouldn't have to invest $73,000. So that's money that could go back into pay for, you know, all these transfers that we've done, 2 transfers from the general fund. So I guess my question is, we've heard tonight about a city employee. Has there been consideration about the contractor avenue? Like, what's the selling point of the city having the pro a city employee? Is this a incentive kind of, or not incentive, excuse me, a hiring kind of as a retention, or a attraction, I guess? Or I guess what's the idea? That's kind of where I'm coming from, is where has this route also been considered?
I did think about what do we do with the contract? And I went back and took a look at the performance under all the contracts prior. And none of them have given us the results we were looking for, that at some point, administration, go back anywhere along the chain and see where there was dissatisfaction with how the contract was and how that contract bared onto our need to get the golf course out of the red. It wasn't that the pro wasn't doing a great job, but the concern was, how do we continue to subsidize at 6-digit levels and above the golf course when we need a way forward? The only way you go forward is increase playership under the current pro contract concept, or you begin to take control of the revenue streams that have been the side hustle for a pro all along. So if we want it, because the other part of this, and I will endeavor to get my hands on it, we've had a study of golf operations done, 2023. And part of the discussion was, you can keep a pro, you can bring an employee on, or you can contract the whole shebang out to a third party. And you might think that's a good way to go, and some folks have a lot of success with it. But when you contract it out to a third party, in the vast majority of the examples I looked at, you lose all control over pricing, you lose all control over revenue streams. You basically don't have one, and you usually wind up subsidizing that contract at a minimum level every year. So, for example, our guys over in Twin Falls, they've contracted out to a third party. He does everything: maintenance, he does pro shop, he does everything that golf operations over at Twin Falls. They subsidize him $200,000 a year. The city only gets revenue back if his revenues exceed a certain level. Then they get a few percentage points. If it goes even higher, they get a few percentage points more. And they would just as soon renegotiate that contract in a lot of ways. But at the same time, there are very few controls over what happens to the prices there as well.
Maybe like us selling our water or wastewater infrastructure, like to a Veolia or something like that. They set the price, where body doesn't get to set the price. This body, sorry.
Thank God. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get probably tomatoes thrown at me walking down the street to my car. I want to get rid of the whole damn thing, but anyway, yeah, I don't. We should not be in the business of this. We should not. I mean, unless we can get in the black, which we haven't been able to, sell it out. But whatever.
I guess that's kind of sorry. Councilman Sanders, back to your point, you were talking about how it's been in the red, 6 figures now. I guess I'm trying to see where we're going to eventually see this, diminish, I guess, because again, we just had 2 transfers, one from the general fund and one from the contingency fund, and that was a 6-figure cost. And so to me, I'd like to see more information of, what's the light at the end of the tunnel where we can actually find this, where it's not okay, next year we're transferring over another $500,000. Oh, we're transferring 600. Oh, we had an unexpected cost here. Oh, it's 700. That's my concern of what's the business plan? And this sounds like this is where the conversation's going, but I'd like to start seeing that light at the tunnel.
And the whole purpose of our discussion up to this point has been around, at what point do we start looking for that light? Where do you put the stake in the ground to say, this is the bottom line, and we move forward from there? Right now, everything's a guess. We could be perfectly good on projections, and then we have another COVID-19 hit, and our playership goes down. That's the business of running something that's open to the public and depends upon the public for its revenue. But by the same token, the first 6 months of doing this process, we might see increases that would put us into the black in the next year. We don't know. But I know this, if we don't have a plan and we don't implement it as we decide we want to do it, and we don't track it continuously, we will never know whether or not we have the expertise and or the support of the people to be able to keep the amenity at a level of service they've come to expect.
And if we don't have a pro, I do know that. I don't know golf, but I know if we don't have a pro, that will always hurt us, right?
Absolutely.
And so that's why I said, when I look at this, we're within our budget, even more. And yes, look, 3 seasonals, you're happy with that? I mean, is that?
The clubhouse.
That's the clubhouse.
Oh. All right, yeah, so you have I know we're not voting on this, but I'll just tell you, I'd be happy with this going forward.
I'll throw this out there. You guys are in very tough roles within the community. So getting tomatoes thrown at you and things like that, we don't make everybody happy. But the golf course is an amenity we offer our citizens just as much as we offer parks and cemeteries and things of that nature. So it may not get to black, but the goal is to get as close to zero.
Understand, but not everyone
not-
uses the amenity
Correct.
that everyone's paying for, and that's what I hear from a lot of people that are just barely making it day by day. So
Same
What?
goes-
Tell them to use the amenity.
if they have the money, we're in a very
We can't
Impoverished
engage.
town.
Okay.
Cemetery. So-
Okay. So, really quick, is there any other further discussion on this for tonight?
I just ask if you guys have a specific question for staff to get, please just send it to us or to try to track the information.
And what we're going to do too is we're going to send you a few job descriptions for a pro. Please look at those. If this council is so amenable that you want the pro, then I'm going to send it out. Well, I'm going to have Tiffany send it out with the job descriptions, and because I would like to get that process started sooner than later. Now, I will say this, and Paul, you can tell me no, since this is, I think it's time sensitive. Are you there, Paul? Can the council amend the agenda to vote on hiring a pro?
Something was banging around. I think Tiffany's.
Tiff, your mic's not even on.
Set up there. Say it again.
Sorry, I had to charge it. We're only at 10%.
Okay, so am I.
So my question, Mr.
Think about
Fitzer,
amending the agenda.
He'd like to know, since it's time sensitive to hire a pro, can he amend the agenda this evening for an action item rather than a discussion item?
can the council?
In
not
the
me.
council, sorry.
And it's because it's a time-sensitive, borderline emergency.
Yes.
Okay, then yeah.
Mayor,
Councilman McCarthy?
I guess I'd be kind of curious on that. I thought Idaho code, when the agenda is amended under 24 hours, no final action can be taken, only if it is an emergency. So how are we defining this as an emergency?
You have a pro that's leaving in T-minus April 20th. It's going to take us probably another best guess month to hire a pro, and the further you pick it down, the longer it's going to take to hire.
Mayor, what if we put it on the agenda for
Alternative is-
Tuesday?
It's
An
gonna be on
alternative is you
Tuesday.
could set a meeting on Friday. Nobody has to be there except the mayor.
We'll
You
just put
guys
it on that
call in,
Tuesday.
just
Okay. Never mind, Paul.
meeting and
Okay.
then just do it.
It's on Tuesday's agenda already, so
Okay.
disregard.
That was gonna be-
Yeah, I was wondering how that was gonna be.
Regardless, just saying a couple extra days, but yeah, it's all good.
Well,
Okay.
while we're here and in this frame of mind, there's a couple questions that I've jotted down that are kind of in the rhetorical at this point. But we've talked about the city obtaining control over revenue streams, monetization of the course, and those kind of things. But the city at this juncture has had 100% control of the expenditure this entire time. And that expenditure increases annually. That is a continued concern of mine. I talked to a handful of people about this in the past. Previous council, we had a discussion about use of city equipment. We have golf carts that are damaged and have been damaged historically through misuse of the public golfing community. We have no recourse at this juncture to go back after those in damages. If we're going to revamp the golf course, we got a lot more than just this thing, because right now we're being presented with a singular plan that you guys have done amazing work collating all of this information. There are other potentials that lie behind this that have not been explored. We have a volume of things with, if we're going to look at the golf course in a total revamp as it was presented, these are things that absolutely have to be addressed in parallel. And I'll tell you, I'm not going to agree to anything until we start working on some of those as well. And that comes from asking for those for 18 plus months, seeing other entities sit in this room in parallel topics and get raked over the coals about that. But we let people pick up the key to a golf cart every golfing day. And those golf carts are damaged, and we're paying for those. The city taxpayer is paying for those. We have struggles throughout the rest of our expenses across our budget. We've heard from community groups this year that talk about how animal control is underfunded. The library has been a topic that I've pushed for 2 budget cycles prior to this. And for those who are not aware, there were times where that budget was at such a critical point that they had to push out doing absolutely necessary repair and maintenance to that building. But in the same year, the golf course got well into 6-figure transfers. So I'm not trying to pit the golf course against other departments, but to keep the global view of scope, like, yeah, the golf course is a pretty thing and it's an amenity. But Decker, you'd mentioned about metrics.
Mhm.
Metrics was something that I had asked for at the beginning of this last contract when the city took over Zen, of what metrics are available to us. The spreadsheet that you sent over is awesome, right? There's some drill down and data beyond that of these figures encapsulate the total users over those seasons, the total number of individual rounds of golf. My question has always been, and it's never quite been answered, of how many individual users, how many of those users exist within the municipal boundary of the city of Mountain Home? How many are outsider visits that we attract in with this cool thing? But as well, how many individual users of the golf course are there? And if we were to compare that number versus our populace, that number versus users of other amenity services like Parks and Rec, Animal Control, Library, I think those numbers are going to be very telling to our expense versus the percentage of user. And that is something, again, if we're going to go down this route, We should be talking about how many individual users use that golf course. I said it before, it is a publicly owned, privately accessible amenity. I can't just walk out on that course with my dog and go for a walk. I can't go take my kids and go sit on a green somewhere and have a picnic. I have to pay to be there in all aspects. But yet my property tax revenue pays to subsidize the thing as well, yet I can't access it unless I pay again for the user fee. So keeping that in scope of the total budget is going to be important both in this decision, but as well in a few short months when we deal with the overall budget, because that's new to two of us on this body. And it's a big monolith. But having an understanding of what this detail is now will help when that question comes along. And those are big questions. So I'll leave it at that.
Good.
I just have one thing to say. And just Councilman Hartfield, like the city to have 100% of the control of expenditures is somewhat factual, yet the way the previous contract was wrote with the golf professional at the time had percentage-based incentives for previous years of rounds of sold. And so if things increase and we didn't know those numbers projected well, then we didn't have control, right? Because they were unknown numbers. So it is a statement we did have control. However, there were very much a lot of unknowns that caused some of those transfers. So just because I get it also publicly from people. So to make sure that's known, like there were anomalies that the city couldn't necessarily, right? Mm-hmm. And so the public, in fairness, needs to know that as well.
Agreed. And I appreciate that perspective, truly.
All right. Oh, yeah, I forgot about them. I didn't know it was on there. Final comments, anything?
I just wanted to see about getting an update for IFAC application. If that's been sent out yet or
Improved?
I did. I taped it today and pushed it out. So it should be on the website or social media today. If not, it will be.
discussed with Keller.
Dale's working on that.
Okay. Then
That's a shorter thing too.
so
Okay.
I just was
It's all
curious.
been
if that's-
experiential to this point.
No, right. That's all I have for.
All right, meeting adjourned.